This is Telewizja Republika. This is home of the free speech. We are in Dubrovnik, Croatia, and we are with our host here, Steven Bartulica. Welcome to Telewizja Republika. Thanks for your presence.
Thank you for your invitation and welcome to Dubrovnik.
Steven, you are a host of the Sixth Mega Conference, the conference that is referring to Charlie Kirk. We are citizens of states from Central, Southern Europe. We have a memory of communism and post-communism, with all the differences and the tragic history of Croatia, from my standpoint, the tragic history of Poland. And because of the background of communism and lack of freedom, especially freedom of speech, we are witnessing something that is worrying for people with that memory. You was born in the United States, but you are a Croatian politician, knowing the history. You're also a professor of political philosophy. So what are your thoughts about this freedom of speech thing related to the tragic death of Charlie Kirk?
Yes, thank you. It is really the issue that is defining our politics today. I want to first say that I have great admiration for Poland. I was a young man growing up in the United States during the pontificate of St. John Paul II, and he was an inspiration to many. And I think we would perhaps still be living under communism had he not been such a heroic voice and a leader for the whole world at the time. So the whole world, the free world, owes a great debt of gratitude to this great Pope. Regarding free speech, we have a problem in Europe, frankly. The left no longer believes in free speech. More and more so-called liberals are on the side of censorship, even classical liberals who are part of this great tradition in the West of debate and open discussion of ideas. So freedom of speech is under attack, and I use the phrase regulated speech is what we have in Europe, not free speech. So we have regulators, we have bureaucrats in the European Commission who are able to use certain laws like the Digital Services Act as a tool to censor speech they don't like. So hate speech, for example, in practice is speech that people in power do not like. We have the case from Germany, the former Minister of Economy, Habeck, from the Greens. He reported over 700 people, Germans, for criminal prosecution because of speech he found offensive and he didn't like. This is what people in power are doing. They're abusing these kinds of concepts that are impossible to define. So in other words, you don't know when you're committing hate speech. You can be writing an opinion online. In Finland, there's a case of a woman who was citing scripture, parts of the gospel, and she was accused of hate speech and is in court. So it depends what the person understands as hate speech, but as a legal concept, I argue that it's impossible to define. And we here in Croatia and in Central Europe in general, in Poland, because of the suffering under communism and the way the communists brutally treated any dissident or anyone they saw as a potential threat, and the way they censored speech to the point that they could simply kill you. We have to learn the lessons, and I'm afraid that in America, we have on the left side, the Democrats, people who are simply justifying political violence. So what happened to Charlie Kirk, this tragic murder of not just a young man and a conservative and a Christian, but a father of two children, is being celebrated by people on the left. Instead of condemning his murder, they're actually publicly celebrating this, and we see this also here in Croatia, certain media personalities and people on the left implicitly justifying his assassination because he was Trump's ally, because he was a conservative, as if this is something that, we deserve. So it's really crazy.
You are a scholar, a professor. You work with a politics philosophy, and what just struck me just moments ago when you just said it, we are talking, you said something like this, that liberal left doesn't believe in free speech anymore.
That's right.
And on the other hand, we are talking about the Democrats in the United States that are obviously opposing the free speech right now. And both of those terms, the liberal left, and Democratic Party, both of these ideas of liberalism and democracy are based and founded on the freedom of speech. It used to be a foundation of the civilization that we are talking about.
Of course.
And now it's obviously in danger. What is the solution? The DSA you just mentioned, the Digital Services Act, is being described by the liberal left as a tool to heal the public debate. While you can be just cancelled online, your thoughts, your ideas, your posts could be deleted, and you would probably even won't be aware of the fact that you.
That's right.
You're
committing a crime. So it's.
So what's the solution?
So well, first of all, I would argue that it's necessary to abolish the DSA. It's such bad legislation, and it's obvious that it's being abused. We have to fight for a culture that can sustain free speech. If you have people who don't believe in it and think that it's justified to violently attack people they disagree with, we have a problem. And it's increasingly on the left that this is occurring. And I think politically, after Charlie's murder, they will see soon they are losing an entire generation in the United States. People who were up until now neutral or not engaged in politics are raising their voices because they've had enough. They've simply had enough.
But this is also very interesting because the assassination of Charlie Kirk was an assassination of an individual, of a personality that actually grabbed the attention of tens of maybe hundreds of millions of people online, not only in the United States, but because of the way he approached people and because of the topics he discussed in the academia and in the campuses in the US, he was actually addressing the whole generation of the people worldwide. He wasn't just an American figure. Everyone knew him.
Especially young people. I would say that the same abuse of power happening in the United States on college campuses where Marxist professors are indoctrinating students. This is happening in Europe as well. We have the same pattern throughout, on campuses in Europe. And so, I've met parents who can't recognize their children after 4 years of university education. They're brainwashed.
So parents, keep your children away.
Be careful. And the left is now imposing things like gender ideology, which is nonsense and very dangerous. They're imposing this on young children in elementary schools because otherwise these ideas cannot spread. Parents naturally are not interested in raising their children like this, but the activists have captured the public schools, and so parents in Poland also should be paying attention. I'm convinced that we are on the winning side. We're not just right on the issues, but we are gaining momentum, but we have to fight for the culture. Winning an election is not enough. We have to get the culture.
Stephen, I will argue, because you probably don't know this, because those are the latest data that were published in Poland like this week. 87% of parents of children who were given a choice whether to take part in so-called health education in the Polish schools or no, which basically the health education was just a disguise for this leftist ideology and propaganda. 87% of students, or actually parents of the students, refused to take part in it. But this is a huge number. And there are no political consequences for the minister who imposed this kind of project. And the same situation we got in various European Union member states. You got about 40% of people leaning conservative in France. Still, conservatives are not ruling in France for the last 20 years, and they will probably not do it in the near future. In Poland, the biggest party is a conservative party, but the coalition of parties opposing the conservatives combined a government only to stop them from taking power. Romania, we just talked to George Simon, we have this kind of situation in many,
In
many
Austria,
states.
Austria
So,
is the same.
what is the solution?
So what you're describing is correct, and it's a basic problem we have in Europe with parliamentary democracy. So you have these negotiations for a coalition government, and oftentimes the party, the biggest party or the party that wins an election is excluded. And this is obviously not democratic. And it's how the European Parliament works as well in Brussels. So there's many, I would say, compromises reached between the EPP, the so-called Christian Democrats. They're not really Christian anymore.
And they're not Democrats.
Or
as well.
Democrats, but they do deals with the Greens and the left, the socialists. And this is really not just a corrupt practice, but it's essentially not, I would say, just, because the people voted for Europe to be more conservative, and our groups are growing, but it's not shown in the votes. And so I would say in America, we see that elections have consequences. When Trump won the election, he immediately began to make decisions, signing executive orders and changing the direction of the country. And that's what people want. Elections should have consequences. In Europe, we have messy coalitions, I would say, that are not natural. So you have parties that really don't have much in common, but the only thing they share, the only interest is to keep the conservatives out. And on the other hand, you have the judiciary, which is also, I would say, a branch of the government that is not properly controlled. So you have out of control leftist judges basically promoting their social agenda on the people with no democratic legitimacy. They're doing as they please. And so I think the people are frustrated. The people are frustrated.
Whenever a politician addresses the lack of democratic control of a judiciary, you hear from the liberal left, wow, you are trying to politicize judiciary. You shouldn't
do it.
That's what they're doing.
That's what they're doing. They've actually they're empowering judges to make judgments that have really nothing to do with the rule of law. So everything, unfortunately, has become weaponized. I think weaponization is the right term, and it's the left that's doing this. We are for rule of law, but we're not. We will be careful about every abuse of power, and that's what I see in the judiciary. We come from. I'm in Croatia. It's a former communist country. We know what the communists were doing. The judiciary was just another tool for their agenda. Right behind where we're sitting, there's an island called Daxa, right off the mainland here. And the communists in 1944 murdered 50 people in cold blood one evening, including priests. They arrested them in the city, took them to this island, murdered them, and no one was ever prosecuted. And you have today so-called liberals basically lecturing us on what the rule of law is. And these people, some of them are former communists who were basically covering up massive crimes. And that's what we have in Europe.
Steve, I have to ask this question. I think stepping away for a while from the current European issues, or maybe no, because the idea of the phrase deep state that was used by Donald J. Trump during his first term between 2016 and 2020, here in Central Europe, in Southern Europe, in post-communist countries, we understand a little bit differently, because we do have our deep state,
yes,
or our deep states within the former communist
yes,
countries.
Yes.
How does it look like in Croatia? Because in Poland, the deep state is pretty always related to the former communist secret services, or the people who took the heritage of the communist secret services. So how does it look like in
I'm
Croatia?
very happy that you asked this question, because it's such an important issue that is not really discussed in the media or in the public square, and everyone knows that it's a problem. So under the surface, you have, I would say, networks, informal networks, of people who were very prominent during the communist period, either from the secret police, or they were party members at a local level, and so they were controlling people and institutions for 50 years. And these networks exploited the period during the 90s after the collapse of communism, when assets former state assets from socialism were being sold, and they had privileged information. They were insiders, so to speak. And they leveraged this, and they were able basically to take control of large parts of the economy. And also they immediately started to work with the globalists who are in the media. We have in Croatia, like in Poland, most of our media is foreign owned. So you have this mix of foreign-owned globalist media imposing their worldview on Croatians. The Croatian viewer at home has no idea who owns the TV channel that they're watching. And the second point is this deep state, these networks that are still very strong. And the journalists are afraid, frankly, to write about this. They still have a lot of power. And people simply know that it's not a society where everyone is equal. So if you're not a member of this or a member of the ruling party today, which is from the EPP, if you're not one of them, you're more or less a second-class citizen. Maybe having a nice life. Some people are doing better than others, but it's not a just society because no one was prosecuted for crimes of communism. Not a single person was ever brought to justice after the collapse. And so Croatia, this is I would say, a failure of our elites after gaining freedom, that they were unable to dismantle this web of people in power who are still today very influential, unfortunately.
Stephen, why there was never Nuremberg for communism?
I think about this a lot. Your viewers maybe are familiar with the Black Book of Communism. This evil ideology, in the end, cost over 100 million innocent people their lives. No one was ever tried. There was never a reckoning with this inherited injustice. In Croatia in 1945, the communists were killing tens of thousands of people in a short period of time. So it was traumatic, and many people lost their husbands, their fathers, their mothers, their brothers and sisters, and no one was ever brought to justice. And the world, I would say, the left still has this approach. They will not yield history to people who seek the truth. So they're still basically, I would say, promoting their propaganda in the schools, in the universities. Hollywood is doing the same. You don't see movies where the communist is the villain who is abusing or killing innocent people. It's usually other villains. And so this is by design. And the left is very, I would say, effective in concealing the truth and spreading their lies. This is their expertise, so to speak. That's what they're experts at. And so my role as a former professor and now in politics is to use my platform to open up these issues, because young people especially, I have now an exhibit on the crimes of communism traveling around Croatia. It was opened in Brussels and now is moving around Croatian cities, and young people are coming to see what the communists were doing on a daily basis, and they're of course interested in keeping this a secret, but we can't allow this. We can't allow and we have to learn that history can be repeated. So the same people who are justifying still today communism, again, if they get enough power, could do a great harm to our society.
Stephen, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for hosting us here in Dubrovnik. And actually, it comes to me as a conclusion of this discussion that it's not that far from the term internationalism of the communism back then to globalism of the current left.
That's right, that's right. And I congratulate TV Republika for all the work you're doing.
Stephen, thank you very much. Hope we see each other soon in Telewizja Republika, the home of the free speech.